Right, should we talk about how many more billionaires there are today than there were even 12 months ago? Well, Forbes' Rich List has welcomed 265 newcomers this year. 141 of them are billionaires, more billionaires from last year. That means there are now 2,781 people who are worth more than $1 billion around the world. That is up from 686 since 2020. So the collective wealth of billionaires has risen by 120% over the past decade. Now, gentlemen, I'm all for hard work, rewarding aspiration. These billionaires, there's no doubt about it, most of them, not all of them, most of them will have worked very, very hard. But we're living through a time, James, where it feels, well, it doesn't feel, it is fact, that we've had the most extraordinary transfer of wealth, particularly since the pandemic, which was the gift that kept on giving for certain individuals. How do we maintain aspiration whilst also somehow narrowing that gap?
I don't think those two things are set apart at all, because we're not talking about the aspiration of, you know, being comfortable so you can look after your family, owning your own home, doing some work in your community. Most people have, they want to be rich enough that they can do something for their family or their community. That's not what we're talking about here. I mean, if you're a billionaire, really not what you're pursuing is money, what you're pursuing is power, because that is what that gives you. And that's part of the reason why, you saw the stat about the wealth going up by 120% over the last decade. The global economy over the last decade has not been doing well. In Britain, living standards are where they pay in real terms is where it was in 2005. Basically, everything is worse than it was 10 years ago for the overwhelming majority of people. And that is partly because the immense power that a small number of people have through their extreme wealth allows them to game the system to extend it. And that is essentially what we're seeing. Yes, of course, there were tremendous handouts with COVID, which amplifies inequality. It's the same thing with the way in which quantitative easing was done after the financial crisis. That's not to say that we didn't need a fiscal intervention, i.e. the government didn't have things to do in both cases. But the way in which it did it, again, undemocratically, through the Bank of England, very little oversight, no democratic debate, no votes, had huge distributional impact. Distributional impact is a techie term for gives the rich loads of money and not for everyone else.
Yosef, looking at the people who are on this list, Bernard Arnault and his family, they are in fashion and retail, Louis Vuitton, Sephora, things like that. They are worth a whopping $233 billion. Elon Musk, number 2, tech. Jeff Bezos, retail and tech. Zuckerberg, 4, tech. Larry Ellison, tech. Finance, tech and pharma. I mean, there's a picture here. My worry, I suppose, is that when it comes to tech, there aren't that many jobs in tech.
I understand the worries, and I have to say, of the names that you listed, kudos to them. They're visionaries, and they've changed the world, and that's why they've made so much money. I would be very hesitant to try and regulate earnings, try and regulate wealth. We've seen it before. It always ends in disaster. The way to narrow the gap between rich and poor is aspiration. It's ambition. It's hard work, and a level playing field. Right?
But is there something demoralising?
I'm sorry. The level playing field, the thing that you got to at the end, yes, of course, which having this kind of ridiculous wealth prevents from happening. But the idea that if only we wanted to be a bit richer, we all would be. If only we could aspire to have the personal family fortune of the Walton family or the Arnault family or Jeff Bezos shooting himself off to space in a phallic-shaped
very many people who aspire,
object.
Very many people who aspire never reach it, right? But aspiration is the driving force. I'll tell you this. My father came to this country on a cargo ship. He managed, with a level playing field, to work hard, buy a house, fund his family, and I can see the path.
But you see, the younger generation can't buy a house now, can they? That's the problem, isn't it? Oh, don't you think the younger generation are just demoralised? Can look at these figures and they go, well, I'm never going to have 100 billion. There's no point even trying.
Well, something is very wrong, actually. I'm to blow my own trumpet, I'm a social worker, a member of a protected profession, officially. I should be able to get a mortgage and buy a house, right? I can't. I'm a million miles away from it. So something is very wrong. But to limit aspiration, to say you can earn this much and no more, the state's going to take the rest, is very dangerous. Very shaky ground.
Let's say, for example, in Britain...
We've got a few seconds, guys. I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap